Hey, what's up, guys? This is David Chase Taylor of 911truther.org. Today is January 15th of 2026. So, based on breaking news and events, it appears the CIA headquarters located beneath CERN at Lake Geneva in Switzerland has authorized their minions in the Supreme Court of the United States to issue a historic legal ruling in respect to two questions posed before the courts in respect to tariffs and the legality thereof on the date of January 16th of 2026, specifically to castrate the power of the Trump administration. So basically, you have CIA headquarters located beneath CERN at Lake Geneva in Switzerland, and they are in control of the United States, and especially their judiciary. And they have authorized one or more of the 9 members of the Supreme Court of the United States to vote against, to rule against U.S. President Donald J. Trump in respect to tariffs. So there is a long legal precedent that has been set over the last few hundred years of U.S. presidents instituting tariffs on other nations. There is a long line of historical precedents, but this is essentially a coup, an economic coup against the United States government to take away this power from the President of the United States. And there are two cases that the Supreme Court is expected to rule on the date of January 16th. And this is going to forever change the direction of the United States as a country, because it will no longer be able to install tariffs on the likes of China, Canada, and Mexico. Since the implementation of tariffs back on April 2nd of 2025, the United States has garnered roughly $600 billion. So this would allow the United States to become debt-free by paying off our national debt, and it would make America a very rich country. Obviously, Switzerland does not want that to happen, and so they have this is essentially a legal coup in respect to the two cases pending, which are the full title is the full case number is Supreme Court docket number 24-1287 is Learning Resources Incorporated ETL v. Donald J. Trump ETL, and the second case is Supreme Court docket number 25-250 Donald J. Trump ETL v. V.O.S. Selections Incorporated. And the two questions that are being put before the Supreme Court is, number one, whether the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA, authorizes the tariffs imposed by President Trump pursuant to the national emergencies declared or continued in Proclamation 10886 and Executive Orders 14157, 14193, 14194, 14195, and 14257 as amended. And then the second question is, if the Emergency Economic Powers Act authorizes the tariffs, whether the statute unconstitutionability delegates legislative authority to the president. And to basically put that in layman's terms, is that firstly, that U.S. President Donald J. Trump authorized tariffs on Canada, China, Mexico, etc., pursuant to the national emergencies declared or continued by the invocation of the Emergency Economic Powers Act, violates the Constitution. And then the second question is whether the United States President Donald J. Trump's invocation of the Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 is an unconstitutional delegation of the legislative power to the executive branch due to the taxing and spending clause of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution of the United States. So basically, A, does Trump have the power to sign executive orders instituting tariffs on other nations under the aforementioned Emergency Economic Powers Act, the International Emergency Executive Economic Act, whatever. And if he does have that power, then is that a violation of the executive branch taking too much power, because the power to tax and spend is supposedly supposed to originate from the legislative branch, not the executive branch. So Trump has to go through Congress, and obviously Congress, being bought and paid for by AIPAC, would never ever authorize Trump to do anything that's good for America, because they want to see him fail. So this case is historic in nature, and this is really, it's really come down to this. And they're going to try to slip it in on a Friday. They're going to try to stage a bunch of terrorist race war stuff. We have the protests going on in Minneapolis, which is cover for this. But they're basically going to try to castrate the Trump administration. That's why I'm calling my reports Espada Uno and Espada Dos, which is in bullfighting is sword 1 and sword 2, because these two swords are basically going to kill the United States from a legal, military, economic standpoint, because this will determine, and this is how we know that the CIA is in control of the United States, is that they have the power to manipulate Supreme Court justices. That's why the whole Supreme Court is basically DEI. All these people are bought and paid for, and they are going to basically sabotage the interests of the United States, their own country. So they're going to act basically against the best interests of their own country, because they're getting paid, likely via cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. They're likely being bought off, paid off, and this is huge. This is the biggest, maybe the most important video that I've ever made, because this determination, this legal rendering by the Supreme Court will change the trajectory of the United States for the next 100 plus years. So this is absolutely, there's no words that I could use to describe the magnitude of this decision by the Supreme Court, because it will essentially deball, castrate, neuter, whatever word you want to use, the Trump administration and their ability to for America to be a sovereign nation. So this is actually how we know this decision is so important, and this is how we know that if the Supreme Court rules against this, basically it will not only sink the administration, but it will sink the United States as a whole. And so we know that the fact is that if Supreme Court justices vote for this, then we know that they're bought off and paid for, because there's nobody in their right mind with any sort of legal background, whether they're on the right or the left, that would ever vote against the United States acquiring $600 billion since April. So what is that, 4 months? So that's less than a year. And so the ability for the United States to pay off her debts and to be debt-free and to basically take care of her citizens is obviously in the best interest of the country. And so anybody that would vote against that is obviously has a secret agenda, and that is being somehow compensated to vote against their own country. And so we're going to see this play out. I believe, based off the reports that I'm publishing and the numerology, I believe that it's going to happen on Friday, January 16th of 2026. And in the aftermath of this video, and in the aftermath of the reports that I have published, it's likely going to be postponed. But this is the plan, is to basically to castrate the Trump administration's ability to basically to tax or tariff imports into the United States. And this is obviously like, I lived in Europe for 10 years, and a 6-pack of beer, American beer in Europe, costs like $25, because by the time it gets through all the tariffs, it's so obviously if you're in Europe, you're going to buy local beer, and so they don't want people to buy local made in USA products, and so they allow all these cheap junk goods from China, Vietnam, etc. come into the United States, and there's no, everybody can sell in the United States with no penalty or fee, and if you try to do the same in Europe or other parts of Asia or the world, you cannot do that. So obviously, if this goes down on the date of January 16th, or they postpone the decision, whether it be by a few days, weeks, or months, I would kindly ask that you download this video and share it with local, state, and federal law enforcement, military, and intelligence officials, as well as with local, national, and international media outlets. Peace.